Alright, hello everyone! In today's video, I want to discuss a very simple concept that would help in understanding the dynamics of market control in an economy and how they subsequently affect welfare outcomes. The first thing I would like to point out is that it is quite intuitive to explain why monopolies, being the only dominant player in a market, are necessarily bad. They preemptively stifle competition from other players, they can price in an exploitative way, and they can act in a very unaccountable manner, which makes them very difficult to regulate from a government perspective. However, keep in mind that the underlying assumptions of these claims are that they are bad outcomes for the public. These assume that competition is an inherent good. It assumes that price is the only determinant of whether something is good or bad. And it assumes that regulation is a good thing in general. So really, just to improve the argument, what we are actually talking about here is that monopolies indirectly and directly threaten welfare through specific mechanisms that they can exclusively exert leverage with as a consequence of being a monopoly. These market mechanisms include patents, which monopolies use to concentrate innovative practices on their own operations, exclusive operational control over areas which reinforce permanent control over these places, and even government lobbying, which shifts the political will to regulate these institutions, allowing many of them to run and evade taxes and jack up their stock prices through their irreplaceability in the financial system, which just means that they're guaranteed bailouts in case that they fail. So for these reasons, we can say that monopolies extract rather than create more value, because they do not necessarily lead to a more productive economy. They just become bigger for the sake of taking more from the economy. However, it is this exact framework on the implicit social welfare outcomes that we are seeking that allows us then to argue and say that monopolies are good, or that some monopolies are good, and even some quite necessary in a variety of circumstances. Some of you may be aware that natural monopolies in the energy and utility sector are good, but why is that specifically the case? Well, it's because from a utility and welfare standpoint, relative geographic control from utility monopolies allows them to scale their operations to a variety of consumers. Every additional consumer that benefits from a particular electricity grid or a water pipeline reduces the marginal cost and has the multiplicative effect of expanding operations, having higher employability, or even more resilient utility infrastructure. And this downward pressure on costs also structurally leads to likely lower prices as well, at least compared to the counterfactual, where competing franchises over one region would have raised those costs in a guaranteed manner. So what are we doing here? What is the point that we're making? What we are doing is we're making a welfare-centered argument that all these outcomes on expanding operations, higher employability, more resilient infrastructure, lower prices, all of these are outcomes that are good for society, and that is a consequence which justifies the existence of a natural monopoly in the first place. So there are also many ways to explain then that the control a monopoly exerts is good for the industry. Because again, the implicit outcome for society is that the company should provide better services and better products. They should accelerate innovation. They should just simply make the economy better in many ways for people's lives to improve. So this can include the benefit of economies of scale in industries where fixed costs are extremely high, such as in software development for Microsoft. The scalability of the PC operating system market allowed it to create an entire ecosystem for software developers across the world, which arguably advanced investment in the internet and the tech industry as a whole. A while ago, we also mentioned technology and innovation, and with the network dynamics of the internet, particularly for social media giants online, having more users reinforces market share and control, but at the same time, it accelerates the development of the internet and it improves the user experience and the collection and distribution of information and data, which arguably is still a good thing for a variety of reasons. And lastly, monopolies also contribute to interlinkages in related industries because of their sheer scale and size. Google's search engine contributes to the rapid development of industries in online advertising, e-commerce, content publishing, and mobile operating systems because of how seamless Google is able to connect all of these things together under one ecosystem. So what's the bottom line then? Again, what is contested here is not necessarily the mechanisms to which they exert their influence. neither actually do people always contest the incentives of monopolies in debates. All the arguments I mentioned today in this video will still work, even if you say that they are greedy or they just want to earn money for profit. Of course, they want to earn money for profit. However, what is instead contested is the underlying analysis on welfare outcomes, particularly on whether the public is receiving its due compensation for their participation in the development of these monopolies. For example, it can be argued that taxpayer money was fundamental to the development of the software that Microsoft eventually developed. And the same can be said for a variety of other tech companies that are dominant today and benefiting from the internet or network systems like GPS systems, which were originally heavily developed by governments. As a consequence, one may argue that perhaps the patent system is unfair, perhaps the excessive control they exert is still siphoning off money from the public rather than distributing it, and that I think instead, these outcomes and these welfare-centric arguments would be a much richer debate to focus on instead. So the bottom line here again is that monopolies can be good or bad based on the way in which they affect welfare and the way in which they interact with the public, especially in the particular way that you utilize this framework when explaining the mechanisms that monopolies employ. Alright, I think that should be it for today's video. Thank you for watching and have a great day.